So for today, we are going to look into the topic number 6, which is the risk management in the aerospace industry. So probably we are going to spend around 40 to 45 minutes, and by looking at the slides, most likely we are going to divide the session into two parts, right? So but we are going to continue the second part next week. All right. So we are now in week number 12. So the risk management topic will be having part 1 and part 2. Okay. And I will be updating the PowerPoint slides later on. The one that you have, there's some mistake in the flow of the content. Okay. So last week we have already looked at the aspect of the marketing. Okay. And then today we are going to look at another part of important role of aerospace industry, which is the risk management. So among others, the goals of this particular topic is to look into the definition of risk and how it is being used in the aerospace industry management system, opportunities and threats in organization, concept of risk to management system, and methods and techniques for identifying and treating risk to management system. Okay, but first, before we go any further, we will have to look into the essential basics and limitations of safety and risk management. So we will look at the general overview, the background of what is actually the safety as well as the risk management, and then we will look also into the relevant definitions. In terms of the background, to improve the currently existing levels of aviation safety, we know already aviation industry or aerospace industry having a high level of safety aspect. Okay, so it is highly regulated. It has the most levels of security. All right, so if we look in the evolution of the aspect of aviation safety or aerospace safety, it evolved from the early 1950s, 1970s, 1990s, and then until now, the levels of aviation safety are being strengthened as well as being further improved. This is especially when considering the continuing growth of the industry itself, which allows additional measures are required. Okay, one such measure is to encourage individual aircraft operators, the airlines themselves, to introduce their own safety management system. All right, so the International Aviation, the IATA, so they provided a ruling that all airlines must have their own safety management system that need to be audited. Okay, although many companies and operators already use a form of safety or risk management, this is often a long way from being designed effectively. So basically some airlines, some companies, some operators, they just adopt from the other renowned companies. They adopt it, they learn from it, and then they then build themselves. Often, operators restrict themselves to risk on the operational level, or what we call it as the risk management, which is considered only as prevention management. So you want the normal practice is basically the risk management is only considered as prevention management. You want to prevent something from something bad happen. You want to prevent any hazardous materials being used, or how to control it. So risk management is actually must cover all company areas. It's not just as a prevention tool, and must be communicated across all the business functions in order to be effective. So we can highlight the relationship of the company risk management in this simple risk management components, where we have component risk management includes strategy. So it has to be strategy risk management. We also have safety company risk management as well as security company risk management. So all of these aspect is the essentials of the company risk management. Right. Let us look into the definition. Some of the terms that we need to really understand in order for us to go into the topic of aerospace industry risk management. The first one is hazard. What is hazard? Okay, you can always look into a dictionary or any references, but the one that being shared here is taken from the syllabus, right? A hazard is a condition or an object with the potential of causing injuries to personnel, right? So damage to equipment or structures, loss of material or reduction of ability to perform a prescribed function. So you can also, as I said, you can also look into other sources of definition for hazard, and but it will not run away from the one that being shared tonight. Okay, so the three categories of hazard are classified as follows. Normally we can categorize it as natural hazards. What is natural hazards? It can be described as an unforeseen and uncontrollable natural event of unusual intensity which has a negative effect of possibly threatens a safe aircraft operation. Right. The next category of hazard is economic hazard. Okay, and it can occur at any time within an organization, whether it is currently in a growth period or suffering from a recession. So hazards in terms of economic has to be also considered in risk management. And finally, the next category of hazard is technical hazard. In general, perpetuate in all maintenance and operational environment where humans interact with technological system. It can be manufacturing machinery, or it can be any environment or system that have interaction between human and technological system. Okay, so we call it as technical hazards. The next one is safety risk. All right, what is safety risk? It is the assessment which express in terms of predicted probability and severity. So normally risk we have we will be using this terminology of probability, how probable that this the item will be occurring, and the severity, how bad it is of the consequences of a hazard, taking a reference the worst possible situation. So this statement is the official definition of safety risk by ICAO. It takes into consideration the identified hazard and classifies it into two categories. One is probability and the other one is severity. So there is, in terms of the risk assessment method, we have a range of probability. Is it 1, 2, 3, or 5? In terms of severity, is it very bad, 5, or number 1, it is less severe? Okay, so the term safety risk is the continuance of a hazard in terms of a scenario that follows due to accepting the hazard. So since it is not only important to identify hazards and then engage a mitigation process, but also necessary to evaluate the seriousness of the consequences, so as to define priorities for the allocation of resources when proposing mitigation strategies. Okay, so this is what we call it as the safety risk. Okay, how about risk management? So risk management means the permanent and systematic recording of all kinds of risks, right, regarding the existing and the development of the enterprise. So it involves analyzing and prioritizing recognized risks. So you have to analyze the risk, you have prioritized the risks. Some risks are high priority, some is less priority, as well as defining the implementation adequate strategic or surgical measures, how to react and act upon it to minimize non-tolerable risk. So risk management comprises not only a unique action, but also a steady process which must be implemented in the enterprise. Okay, so each risk is to be judged individually. So you cannot just group it and treat it as a group. It has to be tackled one by one and to be evaluated by the same yardsticks using the same methodology to establish interconnections as regards the degree and kind of risk potential involved. So the logical conversion of agreed strategic or mitigation measures to manage or reduce potential risk. And finally, risk management can only be successful if the newly emerging risks and claims are communicated to all levels in a standard form on all enterprise levels in terms of risk reporting, and if a suitable organization exists to ensure ongoing process optimization, which we will normally call it as risk controlling. So if you want to look into very detail what is risk management, we are going to look at these two basic thing, which is risk reporting as well as risk controlling. Right. How about risk mitigation? Okay, risk mitigation is the process of lowering a risk to a level which is as low as reasonably practical. So you mitigate the issues. Yeah. So risk must be identified as well as classified in order to develop and apply the right mitigation measures. Okay, so the process of risk mitigation makes it possible for air operators and the airlines to accept certain risks in daily operation and classify them according to company policies and procedures, like for example like weather. So how do you mitigate the risk of weather, flight delay, customers or client complain, so how to deal with it. So it ensures that changes or new situations are assessed according to their safety significance and classify them according to their safety severity. So is it that you want to take the risk to proceed flying the aircraft in the very bad weather, or you want to delay a couple of hours or couple of minutes, but you have to deal with the passengers, the angry passengers, because they are the one who badly affected. Okay, risk mitigation measures often incorporate a cost benefit analysis. So once you do risk mitigation exercise, you also will be involved with the cost benefit analysis. So this analysis must be determined whether risk mitigation makes economic sense or whether the organization must accept the risk or if it must cancel the operation. So it has to be decided by the management during the operation. You cannot just leave the situation and leave the client without any information. So you have to have a proper risk mitigation procedure. All right. How about safety? Okay, we have already looked at hazard just now. Safety is the state in which the risk to harm to persons or damage to property is reduced to and maintained at or below an acceptable level through a continuing process of hazard identification as well as risk management. So often, safety is understood as the condition of zero incidents. So it means that the situation is safe, right? You don't want any incident to be happening. Okay, when being familiar with the hazardous environment in aviation, it becomes clear that risk of incidents is always present. All right, so you cannot have anything that has potential for incident to happen. So the question is now is not about how safe a company, but more on how safe a company wants to be and what measures have to be taken to reach this defined goal. So safety also must be interpreted as a result of efficient review and management behavior of organizational process with the target to control safety risks and hazards in the operational environment. So there's the safety culture that is being inculcated in a company, especially aviation or aerospace related company. It is should become a norm, meaning that safety must be number one. So you cannot jeopardize any safety aspect if it is related to aviation and aerospace industry. Right. As being highlighted earlier, in terms of the need by ICAO for any air operators to provide their own safety management system. So what is safety management system? It is a safety management system which can be described as a set of processes or components that combines operational and technical system with financial and human resource management. So those processes are present in every activity of the aviation stakeholders. It is a methodical approach to safety with the focus on goal setting. So you have safety aspect, but this is how to manage a the safety aspect in a clear manner, in a systematic manner. And it is a clear definition of accountability throughout the operator's organization. So the intention is that of a safety management system is to develop a sensitize the company away from a reactive to a proactive generative safety culture. So it's not about reactive culture, it is about proactive on safety culture in order to identify hazards and possible incidents before they can occur. Okay, now we look at the safety culture, a little bit on the safety culture. An organization's culture is defined by what the people do and which decisions they take. And this reveals the basic values of an organization. All right, it's become a culture. You normally if you go to a factory or maintenance repair overhaul for MRO, they have a dedicated pathway for you to walk. So if as an auditor of come-ins, they can easily see that everybody will walk in the safety zone. So, but if there is no safe audit being conducted, you can see many people just walk everywhere without going through the dedicated pathway that being dedicated for a safe zone. So that means that the company only do not have a culture of safety. They only have a culture of safety during audit process. So that is not a culture that we want to inculcate in aerospace industry. Right. A positive safety culture can be split into 4 different components. The first one is informed culture. The people who manage the system have sufficient knowledge in all function areas of human resources and maintenance, as well as environmental and organizational aspects, which have a direct link to safety. The second one is reporting culture. The first one is informed culture. Then we look at reporting culture, which is the basis for a reporting culture is an atmosphere of trust, where people are encouraged to report their errors, not to keep quiet, not just to put away their errors or near misses. So because you may not being caught during that day, that particular time, but it may happen to other people, and it can cause hazards. It can cause incidents that you do not want in the in aerospace industry. And how about just culture? And based on the reporting culture and understood as a blame-free culture. All right. Employees are supported by providing essential safety-related information. And finally, the learning culture. A company must strive for constant improvement and must share the lesson learned to draw the right conclusions from its safety management system. So they must be continuously providing awareness of safety culture so that everybody will implement it by heart. Right, that is the initial part of my presentation. We will then continue into the second part of the presentation for tonight, which is theoretical background of risk and safety management. Right. So as I highlighted for tonight presentation, we are going to divide it into two parts. Okay, for tonight, maybe we will look into the first two, risk and safety management, which is necessity and development of risk management, and then we will continue for the internal control system. So, however, for the fundamental and structure of safety management system in aviation, we will look into it in next week lecture. All right. Right. So necessity and development of risk management. So there are it is being divided into four segments here. The first one, we will look into the importance of risk management related to aerospace, and then regulation of risk management, milestone in risk management history in general, and finally general risk management models. I'm not going to show all the relevant the available risk management models, but I will just pick one which is most relevant to the aerospace industry. Importance of risk management. Okay, risk is considered as an essential element of strategic management. So if you come into any aerospace industry, name it, whether it is a manufacturing aerospace company or MRO aviation company or engineering design aviation company, you will be seeing risk being put into the agenda. It is a risk management as one of the important agenda of the top management, and is currently being discussed in many empirical industry studies and is also prominent in connection with firm and business unit performance. As companies are usually only able to achieve higher returns by simultaneously taking additional risk. Okay, you cannot just gamble. Risk is not about doing gamble. You decide, you have to make analysis, you have to calculate the cost benefits, and then you have to make decision, strategic decision. So risk management has to decide what kinds of risks are acceptable for an organization. And in terms of the strategic risk management, it can be described as a process of identifying, assessing, and managing risk. So anywhere in the strategy, you want to look your strength, your weakness, the threat, as well as the opportunity, with the goal of protecting and creating shareholder and stakeholder value. Strategic risk management can only work if an organization defines tolerable level of risk or risk appetite as a guide for strategic decision making. Okay. In terms of the importance of risk management in the aviation industry, risk can be broken into two different levels. And namely, the first one is strategic levels. The second one is process level. And what is strategic and process level? It is being described in this risk model for the aviation industry. I take it from IATA 2013. Okay, the risk at the strategic and process level is comprised of the following subcategory described below. If we look here, strategic level risk, and the first one is if categorized as strategic, which is including the branding, reputation, business planning, capital availability, capital allocation, alliances, and partnership. So this is grouped under the strategic level risk. And then if we look here, public reporting in terms of financial and regulatory reporting. With regards to environment or hazard, it includes competitor, stakeholders' expectation, sovereign, political, catastrophic events, customer preference, financial markets, and environment. So this is how you group all the aspect of elements of the strategic level risk. So it's not just being grouped into one basket, it is being divided into subcategories. In terms of the process level risk, okay, it's being divided into three. One is financial, regulatory, and then the operation. If the financial include the price, liquidity, credit. Regulatory include financial reporting, compliance, industry operation, licensing, safety and security compliances, as well as the operation, all the activity related to operational capacity, product development, customer satisfaction, information technology, business interruption, operational efficiency, channel effectiveness, internal governance, organizational resources, as well as the health and safety. So when you have the discussion or the meeting on the aviation industry risk, you normally have the strategic level risk and then look into the process level risk. Okay. So the regulation of risk management. There are several regulations in air law concerning risk management and safety management, but we are not going into the detail of all these safety aspects. ICAO Annex 6, operation of aircraft. You can easily download all of this document and look into the respective document so that you can really understand what's going on. This is just a handful of examples. ICAO Annex 19 on safety management, and then we have civil aviation security, we have the European Aviation Safety Agency, and we also have our very own CAM safety regulation for Malaysia. Right. In terms of the milestone of risk management history, okay, the development of risk management in general being divided into 5 different stages. If we look in the history from 1930s until now, the risk management histories has been evolved. For example, like in the early 1970s, we only have credit risk management. Okay. Thank you, Izwan, so for Malaysia CAM CAT 19 or something like that, just now. And then for market credit, financial risk management, operational 1990s, it is evolved into operational risk management. And then for the year 2000, it started to have corporate risk management. And finally, the latest one is compliant risk management. So this is a development of risk management which is adapted from this particular reference. So basically, the risk management methodology is being evolving according to time. So the model of general risk management that I want to share here is on the ISO 31000, 2009 risk management principle and guidelines. We are not going to go through the whole ISO 31000 risk management principle and guideline, but just to introduce to you what is it all about. Okay, so the risk management principle guideline is the worldwide available standard for risk management. So including, it is also being applicable for aerospace, for automotive, for even universities, companies, factories, and so on. They have been adopted this ISO 31000. Okay, the purpose of having this standard is to integrate and adapt the risk management process to already available management system. Normally, a company that adopted this ISO 31000, they have their ISO 9001. So as we have already gone through the aerospace standard AS 9100D, if you still remember, so it also include the aspect of risk management. Okay, so there's if you look carefully in AS 9100 D, okay, there is one element of risk management, but the more detailed risk management principle is being provided these particular standards. Okay, so in order to optimize and tailor the risk management process to the needs of organization and not just to fulfill compliant issues. So many company nowadays, they just want to have the certification, the standards in place. They are very proud that they have ISO 9001, and then they also have ISO 31000, and then they have ISO 17025, and then many other standards. But what for? Is it just to fulfill compliant issues, or you want to provide quality, quality aspect in terms of risk management? Okay, so the system of ISO 31000 normally is based on the following core principle. As I said, we are not going to go into the detail, but this is just to highlight what is it all about. Normally, the first core principle is that top management is to be made accountable for risk management. Okay, so top management means if you have the CEO of the company or the president of the company, the chairman of the company, they have to be involved. It's not just being informed, they have to have their hands dirty, or to have the knowledge as well as the involvement in risk management. Okay, because they are going to be accountable person. They are going to be accounted for, which has to be constantly monitored and controlled at the very top level of the company. If it is only being done at a very small unit, you have a unit of risk management or a division of risk management, the CEO or the top management, the managing director doesn't know anything about risk management, meaning that it is not a culture. It is just for the sake of having compliance. All right, so that is not the spirit of having risk management in a company. So the second principle is that it has to be communicated throughout the organization on all operational management. So not only the top management level get involved, the managerial level get involved, they're being informed, they're being involved, and then at the ground level, at the floor level. So because the risks at different level are different. Okay, maybe for the top management, they look at the strategic level, but at the shop floor worker, they look at the risk at their workplace, at where they work every day. So it's not just at strategic level. Okay, so the initiation of the risk management process has to be communicated top down, from the top, number one, until all the workers at the ground level, even the cleaners, the guard, and everybody that working in the company. Finally, the standard tries to identify all the different internal and external risks throughout the organization, internally as well as external risks. So these identified risks influence the overall implementation of the risk management system. So it is being summarized in this systemic approach to risk management according to ISO 31000. So adapted from ISO 31000 2009. Okay, where the corporate policy, it is the that is being highlighted here, where you have your vision, the mission of the company, the way forward. So this is similar to PDCA. So, but now is PIRI. Okay, plan, implement, review, and improve, or plan, do, check, and act. Okay, so if you look here, the implementation, okay, it is communicated and consulted. You have to consulted all the levels in terms of establishing the context, in terms of having risk assessment, risk identification, risk analysis, risk evaluation, and risk treatment, right? And everything is being monitored and reviewed, and the process continues to be fit into the implementation process. So once it is being implemented and it can be reviewed, it can be improved, then it can be planned for the company to achieve the company vision and mission, right? Okay, so the final part for tonight presentation is the internal control system, what we call it as the ICS. In order for a company to implement risk management, they also should have internal control system. So I have divided into the subtopic into 4 segments. And the first is to look at the concept and objective of an internal control system, and then the different components of ICS, tasks and responsibilities, and finally minimum requirement for an ICS. All right. The concept and objective of an internal control system. So ICS encompasses all the processes, methods, and measures arranged by the directors and senior management that serve to ensure the proper ongoing conduct of a business. Normally, the internal control is supportive of achievement of business objective through effective and efficient management, compliance with laws and regulations, protection of business asset, prevention, reduction, and detection of errors and irregularities, and ensuring the reliability and completeness of accounting, and finally, timely and reliable financial reporting. So these are the elements of internal control system. Okay, is the components of the ICS are being divided into 5 categories. Let us look into one by one. The first category is control environment. The description of control is that the environment is that the design of control environment of a company which comprises various components and the way management influences the processes in the company. So these include regulations for the delegation of tasks and responsibilities, communication and enforcement of integrity and ethical values, commitment to competence, the involvement of those responsible for the management and supervision, leadership principles and management style, organization structure, and finally, interaction with employees and customers. So this is what we call is the first ICS category, control environment, right? And then the next one is risk assessment. Basically, it's in every organization needs to be aware of the risk that it is exposed to and how to manage this risk. In terms of ICS, the risk assessment typically involve specification of corporate objective, risk management objective, normally include safety objective, department of risk management policies, risk identification, identifying the principal risks that could result in misstatement the accounts, and the accounting and business risks that could affect the financial reporting, because human can also make errors in terms of financial reporting. So the risk assessment of the importance of risk and assessment of the likelihood of occurrence. It has to be included. Information or communication, defining who, when, what is to be informed. What you want to inform who you want to communicate the information, when is it going to happen, and what you want to inform. Risk management, decisions about possible measures, monitoring of the control measures. So this is the second category of component of an ICS. The next one is control activities. Each company must define and implement instructions and procedures to ensure that those activities which have been considered as necessary targets by the board of directors and the executive board are executed. And the control activities. Example of control activities are the processes of authorization, like the levels of authorization. Who can authorize certain levels? When it can happen? Signature policies, work instructions, performance monitoring, entry rights in IT process. Who can access certain data in the company? Okay, physical controls and segregation of duties. So those are what we call the control activities. And then number 4 and number 5, which is accounting relevant information system. Information and communication channel must be defined so that the board of directors and the employees have the right information at the right time in order to perform the required activities and control. All right. So it happened in many places where each time the company, the top management would like to request for any information, okay, so the data management manager will ask everybody to provide information, which is not right, which is not supposed to be like that, because most of the information has already been stored somewhere, so you do not have to ask everybody to resubmit the information every time you want to conduct some analysis. So it has to be properly managed. Information system that ensure all relevant information is reliable and timely collected, processed, and distributed are a prerequisite of component of internal control system. And finally, monitoring of the internal control system. The ICS is only effective if the control measures are reliable in the long term. Right? It has to be revised accordingly, so you can improve the processes along the way. Therefore, the ICS must be constantly monitored, so that it remains effective. Okay, so this includes a timely review of the structure and function of the controls by the supervisors and the implementation of necessary corrective measures. How about tasks and responsibilities? The responsibility for the implementation of ICS is with the board of directors. Respectively, it's the audit committee. So, board of directors is being accountable for implementing the internal control system. Primarily, the board has to make sure that the appropriate control measures are taken so that misstatements of transactions and the related statements are prevented, detected, or can be corrected. Okay, very important. If not, board of director will just be a board having allowances, come to meetings, enjoy the perks and so on without knowing the process of the company. But the management is responsible for the operation and maintenance. So basically, the overview is the board of directors. Not saying that the board of directors will take charge of the day-to-day running of the company, but they need to be known in terms of the internal control system by acting as the audit committee. Right. So I'm not going to go through the roles and responsibility for the board of director and the management. It is easily understood, and you can also read through the roles of board of director as well as the management. Okay. But I want to highlight what is important here is that the board has to periodically deal with the following fundamental issues in relation to the internal control system. Number one is that they have to make sure that whether there are all significant risks in the operational business processes known. Okay, they have to challenge the management and the top management of the company. Are there measures that reduce significant risk to an acceptable level for the company? Do board of directors and management receive the guarantee that the ICS is effective and operating efficiently? Not just having an agenda is enough. This is not a true picture. And finally, do organization and corporate culture allow for continuous improvement of processes and controls? Finally, the last part of today's lecture is on the minimum requirements for an ICS. So in determining the requirements of ICS, the board of directors considers the principal aspects of effectiveness, accountability, and efficiency. So what do we mean by effectiveness? Normally, compliance with corporate culture, clearly defined responsibility, controls are aligned to risk, controls are integrated into process and monitored, sufficient tested controls, well-trained employees, and a clearly defined information and escalation process. That's how you gauge whether the company has internal control system for effectiveness. Traceability. It means that ICS objective and degree of expansions are documented, business risks are documented, processes and controls are recorded in writing, control activities are clearly documented, and the quality of ICS is regularly assessed and reported. So that's what we mean by traceability. Okay. And finally, efficiency, whether the ICS system is efficient or not, by looking it as an integral part of the enterprise-wide risk management. Use of internal audit. You may have to form your internal audit team and coordination with auditors. Maybe you can also engage external parties and focusing on key risks and possibly to automate the controls. So there are no statutory regulations on the scope and the minimum requirement for the ICS. However, ICS must meet certain requirements to ensure that the auditor can confirm its existence by showing the ICS that already being documented. ICS also has to have the size relevant to business risk and be appropriate to the scope of the business. ICS must be communicated to the employees and must also be applied and has to be implemented, and finally must have a control consciousness. Finally, the cost of establishing and maintaining the ICS are in the medium term and certainly expected to be offset by the following benefits, where you will have an organization will have clear organization roles and responsibilities, identified business risks with associated controls, identification of efficiency potential in business processes. You can also reduce amount of error corrections, development of control consciousness of employees, increase confidence in the financial report, improve corporate monitoring, eliminating redundancies, reduce risk of fraud, and fewer error corrections during the audit. So these are among the benefits of having ICS implemented in a company.